And I will share my screen. And if I can just get either something in the chat or a thumbs up from you, Olivia, that you can see my screen and it says from St. Helens to High School and it's a slide. Thank you, Olivia. Okay, so welcome uh, to session one of From St. Helens High School to College. Today's topic is going to be time management. Um, my name is Alwyn. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently a senior at Portland State University. I am majoring in math with a secondary education minor, and I'm graduating on the 13th of June, and then we'll be starting graduate school working toward my master's in education after I get my bachelor's. I also work in a wide variety of roles at the high school. So some of you may know me through any one or more of these roles. I'm currently an Avid tutor working in the Avid classrooms. I also run the Learning Lab, which normally happens in the library, but has been in Zoom since we've gone to remote learning. I also work the intercession events and the Cocoa and Cram events, so you might recognize me floating around helping students. And I'm also an Aspire mentor, so I work one-on-one with students who have a desire to go to college to make sure that they're on track to go to college and that they have all the college processes done before they start college. So we see here an image. This is the schedule. I'm going to be hosting 9 weekly Zoom sessions. The first one today is time management. The other 8 will be held on the following Fridays. All of them will be from 12 to 1, though we might end a little bit before 1. And all of them will have the same login information. So the way you access this class or this Zoom session is how you will access the subsequent ones as well. So let's dig in. Why is time management so important? So I remember when I was a teenager, barely, and keeping track of homework sometimes was difficult. Even remembering my class schedule sometimes got crazy, especially when I was like changing from classes during the quarters or the semesters. I also was involved in a lot of clubs and was involved in bands. So juggling and managing all of those extracurricular activities can sometimes be stressful, especially if you're involved in a lot of different extracurricular activities. Um, excuse me. Some of us may be working while we go to school. So you have to find a way to manage your work life with your school life and then just with your life. So trying to find a way to balance all that time so you make sure you have enough time for yourself. That's very important as a student and as an adult, actually. We all want time for our family and friends. You know, you want to make sure that you have time to get all of these other obligations done that you have to get done and still be able to spend time and hang out with friends and spend time with your family. And lastly, self care. I'm a huge advocate of self care. Self care will actually be the third session in these weekly Zoom sessions, because I believe that, especially since we're all remote and we're all stuck at home more or less, it is crucial that we are taking care of ourselves and our bodies and our minds. So as a student, we're juggling all of these things. Once you're in the real world as an adult, whether you're in college or in the workforce, especially in the workforce, bosses don't like employees who are late. I think it is the understanding that things happen. You know, we live in a city that gets cut down the middle by a train. So I'm sure all of us have probably been late to something at least once because the train was parked on the tracks for 20 minutes. I know I personally have been late to the high school to work a couple times because of that. Um, However, bosses don't want employees who are chronically late. I actually have managed several businesses throughout my working career, and I fire people who are habitually late. Again, the expectation is, yeah, you may be late once in a while, but if you're 5 minutes late every day, 15 minutes late every day, that's sending a message to the boss that their time and their job isn't really a priority to you. So they'll let you go to find someone who can be on time. Again, in the real world, just like in school, you're juggling multiple responsibilities. You have to keep track of when bills are due. You have to keep track of your work schedule. For those of you who may have children, you will eventually have to be keeping track of your child's schedule in addition to your own, which can be overwhelming if you have a child who's really involved in sports and extracurriculars. And lastly, really, there's just never enough hours in the day to do what you want to do. That's why developing a time management schedule will help you schedule that time specific for you to do things that you want to do. And I have had students ask me, both here at the high school and at PSU. I work with freshmen at PSU this year. And I've had students ask me what's the best way to manage time. Truly, there is no one size fits all when it comes to time management. And I'll show you some examples. I use three different systems. And between the three systems, I get one giant system that works for me. You may find that you try something and it doesn't work. You know, don't be afraid to let that go and try something else until you find a system that works for you. Also, you may find that something that works for you seems ridiculous to your friends, or something that your friends are using seems ridiculous to you. Doesn't matter if it's ridiculous to you. If it's working for them, that's all that matters. And likewise, if it's working for you. So the important part is to find a system that works for you so that you can stay on task, make sure you're getting your homework assignments done, and you're getting time to go to work and be involved in extracurriculars and time to spend with that family and friends. So, my primary system, and the purpose of the slide presentation is I wanted to show three different things that I use, plus talk about some additional pointers that I found from a magazine article about time management tips specifically for students. So first I'm going to show you a few slides that show you what I use. Um, you could try any one of these. You could try all three of these. You may have a system in place that is completely different from the three that I use and it works for you. Again, if it works for you, it's an awesome system. So for me, I discovered Google Sheets. Realize that it's a system that works for me because it's digital. We always have our phones on us. So I can always pull up my schedule on my phone, or when I'm sitting at my computer doing homework. Um, Really, it's accessible 24/7 unless you have no internet. But what I do is I start with a template. I've actually changed my template since I did these slides, but I didn't want to change the slides. So for the purpose of the slides, this is what I'm currently using. I have my days of the week labeled here at the top. I have my day starting at 7:30. I end my day at 9 o'clock. So this last block here is from 8:30 to 9. I also have a box on the bottom where I list what subjects I have things due in. So I can look at this and I can see what my day looks like, and I can also see what things I need to make sure I turn in that day. Once I have this template, I create 10 individual Google Sheets, one for each week of my term. So I go by my terms. For you, it might be easier to go monthly or every 3 months. So I have 10 weekly sheets plus a sheet that I use for finals week because finals week is always kind of wild. And I plug in what I'm doing. I first plug in commitments, things that other people schedule that I have no control over when they happen. And I do this based on a color coded system. So you'll see the yellow boxes here. Those are days and times that I'm expected to be doing something at the high school. When I did the system initially, these yellow boxes were for the limited in-person support, which has now ended, which is why my schedule had to change. And then this yellow box here on Thursdays from 4 to 5:30 is when I host virtual learning lab. And then I have other color coded boxes. My PSU meetings, these are clubs or organizations that I'm involved with on campus that have regular meetings that I don't schedule. So I have to keep those where they are. I have no flexibility in changing those. And then I have my classes, specific class times when I meet in purple. This is time that I've blocked out for myself to do specific tasks. And then this bright blue is stuff that I do specific with my family. I do a Saturday afternoon, evening thing where I don't worry about schoolwork. I'm not working because I work at the school. So that's just time that I'm carving out that's going to be family time every week. I highly recommend scheduling that sort of time with family. And if you have friends that you like hanging out with, maybe you're social distancing at Starbucks, or you hang out on a Zoom call, I recommend scheduling that time every week. I have found that if I don't schedule the time to be social, I'm not social, especially now that we're stuck in our houses. So I cannot advocate enough for making sure that you're scheduling time for family and friends, because that is how we recharge our energy, and that's how we relax. So we have all these other things going on our schedule that are kind of crazy, and they suck away our energy. Make sure you're scheduling some time for yourself and some time for you to spend with family and friends as well. So after I've plugged in my commitments, I then plug in the rest of my schedule. So this, I believe, is this week. It was this week. Some things shifted, but um, we can see that I've changed the color code again. My classes I color code on my calendar, and if you attend next Friday's Zoom call on organization, you will see how that works and what that looks like as it transitions from this schedule to my book to my actual calendar. Mark, hello. I want to say welcome and just let you know that this is being recorded. So if you do not want your image showing up on the recording, feel free to stay with your video off. So all of these boxes that have letters, these are my classes. So the yellow, the green, and the pink, those are all times that I am scheduling to work on classwork. You'll see I have the time that I am at the high school. I have my little window for traveling to and from the high school. My classes are still here as they were in the previous slide. Um, but now I've literally plugged in every living space with either some sort of food activity. You'll see dinner here at the bottom, or self care. Self care is what I was talking about earlier, um, and will be covered in session 3. So 2 weeks from today, I'll be talking about self care. Self care is taking time out specifically for you to recharge. Um, you'll see here that I have, whoops, I went backwards. That's crazy. Here we go. Um, we'll see here that I have a 4 hour block from 1 to 5 on Monday where I'm doing nothing but homework. It's important that I have that time before that homework block to sort of recharge and relax so I can be prepared to do the homework. And then I look at meals as self care as well, because when I'm eating dinner, I'm not on my phone. I'm sitting at a table with my family. I'm having conversations and I'm eating. Um, so I am a total advocate of self care as well, in addition to making sure that you are scheduling time for family and friends. Another thing I'll point out, since we were briefly talking about self care, you'll see, for instance, here Monday from 1 to 1 or from 1 to 2, I'm working on math homework. I block it out in hour chunks. I actually only do 50 minutes of work, and then I take a 10-minute break. Those breaks in between study sessions are crucial. Nobody wants to go from studying one subject and then directly into studying the next subject without taking a minute to transition. So I try to be mindful that when I have an hour blocked out for a subject, I'm actually blocking out 50 minutes, and then I take 10 minutes to get a beverage or grab a snack or visit with my family, check my email, go use the restroom. Whatever I need to do in 10 minutes to take me out of the subject I was in and to get me prepared to work in the subject that I'm going to next. So this schedule is a flexible schedule. This was specific to week 2. I just want to show you, this is my week 5 schedule, which looks a little different. I have a 5-hour math exam I have to take on this Wednesday. So I've blocked out that entire day. I'm not doing anything but preparing for that exam, traveling to it, and taking the exam. So we can set a template and then say, okay, these are the non negotiables. These are the things that happen every week. But there will be weeks when that goes out the window because something more important has come up. So for my week 5, this exam it's my last requirement to actually be able to start grad school in June. So I have to take this exam. And I will move on. Another easy way to manage time, and we all have cell phones. Well, most of us have cell phones. Using alarms on your cell phones, using calendar apps. Google Apps is a good one. Using or Google Calendar, excuse me. Using your Notes app. I know of students who have just kept track of what they do on a weekly basis in the Notes app on their iPhones. And to just give you an example, these are alarms that I have set on my phone every week. You'll see my little wake up buttercup alarm. My classes are here. My college classes are here. I have an alarm set every Friday to remind me to log into this Zoom and to lead the Zoom session with y'all. Um, I have an alarm to empty my ice maker every Sunday at 3 because every week it ends up overflowing because I forget to do that. So I have an alarm set for that. These two alarms are no longer valid because Learning Lab has changed a little bit. But things that you have to do every week, feel free to set an alarm for that if that's something that works for you. If you have your volume all the way down, and your phone is never with you, if you're like in the house, it's in a different room, alarms may not be the right way for you to manage your time. But for me, my phone is always with me. So if I'm away from my computer, the alarm will go off to remind me, oh, yeah, I have a class to go to. Or, oh, yeah, it's Sunday at 3 o'clock. I need to go empty the ice maker before it overflows. And then another option is Google Calendar. I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with Google Calendar. You might even use Google Calendar. So this is a random week in February. I wanted to pull a week that actually had a lot of things going on, both things that I'd scheduled and things that I didn't schedule. So you'll see this was the President's Day week, so those holidays automatically populate. Um, this was an automatic population from PSU letting me know that I get to register on that day. This is a meeting. These boxes that are black with the purple writing, those are classes that I didn't schedule, my teachers scheduled, but they show up on my calendar to remind me I have class that day. I feel the Google Calendar is a great tool to utilize if you have a habit of making arrangements and scheduling things when you are away from your computer. Because if you look at your Google Calendar, you can go, oh, wait, I already have something going on that day at that time. So I need to schedule a different time for that. But again, this is one more tool that you can use to try and manage your time throughout the week. And it's something you can reflect back on too and look back at it and go, oh, you know what? I had all these things scheduled for this week, but I only hit a couple of them. And then maybe reevaluate how you're budgeting your time. So this is a list of 10 effective time management tips for students. I actually pulled this from an article, and if anybody is interested at the end of my presentation, I can share the link to that article if you'd like to read it. A lot of these we've already touched on. So creating a master schedule, that is basically my Google Sheet, is my master schedule. And then using an agenda or a planner, that would be your Google Calendar. Or if you're a person who likes using paper planners, a paper planner is a great way to keep track of appointments and scheduled items. Eliminate distractions. Um, this is especially true when you're doing homework. I know we all are probably struggling to be at home and doing homework, myself included, because all my stuff is here. And it's really easy for me to be, okay, I'm doing homework, but there's my phone. How about if I just see if someone liked my post on Instagram? And then 2 hours later, you've been scrolling Instagram and have done none of your homework. I personally do not bring my phone into my study space. That is a personal choice because I know that it is a dangerous wormhole that I will go down if I pick that phone up. Sticking with my study schedule is also something that helps me avoid distractions. Some of us are able to have dedicated study spaces. Some of us are living in homes where you have siblings and you don't really have a study space. So you're working at a kitchen table and you're subject to family coming in and out to get snacks and sodas. Um, Try and eliminate the distractions as much as you can with the understanding that your specific situation, you may not be able to eliminate all distractions. The next one is setting goals for each study session. I think this is a great tip and something that I struggled with when I first started college. I would have a homework assignment and I would have to read 50 pages of my psychology book. So my goal for that study session would be to read the entire chapter. Well, I am not a fast reader. If I read quickly, I end up rereading passages because they don't absorb. So set smaller goals. So if you have 50 pages to read and you're setting up a 1 hour chunk of time to read, say maybe I will read and understand 12 pages. Set a goal that's realistic to you. And the point of setting a goal is we want to set something that we can achieve. because everybody loves the feeling you get when you actually reach a goal. And give me just a minute. Okay. So, setting those goals really help making sure that you are reaching little small goals. There's an old adage: how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So take those big assignments and chunk them into smaller pieces. It'll be a lot easier for you to reach those goals. Um, Making a project plan. I don't know how many of us are doing projects online right now with partners in the classroom, but having a plan of attack for projects is always a good idea. Letting students know, let's each take a piece of this project, figure out how we're going to manage this project. Always a good idea if you're working on projects. Again, usually the group you work with, you can find tasks for each of you to work on, and then make sure that you're checking in with one another to make sure your project's getting done in a timely manner. Number 7, work on one thing at a time. Talked about that a little bit. Talked about that a little bit in number 4. Um, don't set up an hour of work time to work on 3 different subjects. Make sure you're focusing your time for one subject. Um, so if you have an hour set aside, that hour is math. And if you finish math early, feel free to tackle another subject in that hour range, whatever time you have left. But I think it's ill advised to assume that I'm going to sit down for 4 hours and I'm going to work on 4 classes. Break that down into smaller chunks and isolate those classes. I think that's a better and a more effective way to manage time and a better way to work, honestly. Nobody wants to be juggling multiple things in the same amount of time. Start in shorter bursts. I have found that for me, 50-minute work time with a 10-minute recovery works really well for me. For you, you may be able to do 2 hours with a little bit of a larger recovery time. You may want to start small and say, I'm going to do a 30-minute chunk of time, 25 minutes I'm going to work, 5 minutes I'm going to transition to the next chunk of time. That range is going to be different for every student. So, my advice is if you want to try that, start with a 30-minute chunk of time and work for 25 minutes, then take a 5-minute break. And if that doesn't work, you could go even smaller. Um, and then if that does work really well for you, sorry, I'm getting like bogged down the chat. It's like squirrel. Anyway, uh, if that time works really well for you and that 30-minute window is amazing, feel free to extend it to an hour. Extend it to 90 minutes. I honestly wouldn't go more than 90 minutes. As a college student, I struggle to stay focused on one subject for an hour and a half. So I wouldn't go any higher than an hour chunk of time per subject. Start the day early, start early in the day. We are sharpest in the morning, typically speaking, but I have known students who do all of their best work overnight. They're doing math at 2 a.m., which I think is crazy. Um, but generally, starting earlier in the day is a better way to be focused when you're at your sharpest. Um, that's why school starts at 8 a.m. and not at noon. That's why you don't go to school from noon to 7, because there are scientific studies that show, typically speaking, humans are more alert and more ready to work in the mornings. But if that's not you, feel free to set your study hours later in the day. And the last thing, get 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Again, that's relative. That's a general guideline. I find that if I get 10 hours of sleep, it takes me longer to wake up and to get going. Um, Usually 6 to 8 hours is right about my window. And everybody will have a different window. So you are all in high school. So you probably know by now how much sleep you need generally to feel well rested and ready to tackle school in the morning. So that is the top 10 lists. I will share that link in the chat when we go to the discussion so that if anybody wants to read a little bit more about it, they can. And that really reaches the end of my presentation. So just in summary, managing your time is super important when you're a student, but it's even more crucial as you're an adult because there are things that you'll have to do that, there are big penalties if you don't do them, like paying bills on time or being on time to work every day. Nobody wants to be known as the person who's always late. I know those people, and they don't like being known by being the person who's always late. Um, Finding a system that works for you. Again, I shared three different systems. There are many systems out there, and I'm sure there are a bunch of amazing apps that I've never explored because I don't need to, because I found something that works for me. But feel free to explore the free apps that are out there. Truly, you may be a person that if you just take a lined sheet of notebook paper and write out your appointments and your school schedule for the week, that may be all you need. And for that, I would say awesome. I tried that and it didn't sit well with me, so I needed something a little bit more digital and a little bit more portable and something that I could manipulate easier than erasing on a piece of paper. And then, like I showed you between my week 2 and my week 5, my schedule shifted that Wednesday when I have that exam. Um, be prepared for that. Your schedule may shift from week to week. You may have to change things the day before. I've actually had things that got put on my calendar in the morning for that afternoon. So just be mindful that it's not a perfect system because you can't predict everything that's going to happen, but be flexible. And then that leads into my final thought. You cannot plan for the unexpected, but if you are prepared for what's expected, that helps lessen the impact of that unexpected event. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and I am going to stop recording.